Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to talk about somebody who's always in and out of the news, and that is Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama has been alluding for a long time that there's something not right in her life, and I think what I'm alluding to is what I think she is. There's problems in her marriage. She's like not seen with Barack, and there's been instances at funerals and things like that. I mean, they are not together. What can we see in the chart that helps us better understand what's going on with this? As an astrologer, I'm always nosy. I want to see what's going on in people's lives when they're in the news, right? I want to remind everyone about the Sedona, Arizona conference that I'm going to be speaking at. This is going to be August 20th. This conference has amazing teachers, and I have an all-day workshop on the 20th, but it goes to the 25th with an all-star cast. Now, the reason why I'm reminding you about this, there is a deadline with this great discount. You will get a $100 discount plus a 10% discount if you use the code Joni, which is my name, Joni, and the deadline is July 14th, and it is filling up quickly. Let me just say, there are only 108 spots. When it's full, it's cut off. So you don't want to miss this conference. I want to meet you. So come to Sedona, one of the most beautiful places on earth, and learn some of the most valuable, incredible information. Let me remind you, I'm going to teach you how to read a chart. This is the first half of the day. The second half of the day, I'm going to give you incredible information about the 3 outer planets, and especially how they're going to affect us in the future. The world is about to change, and I've got some very, very important information to deliver. So come meet me in Sedona, Arizona for the conference, the 9 Jewels of the Lotus, and we're going to have some in-depth conversations. Don't forget, July 14th, the cutoff date for the discount. And don't forget, it's going to fill up. The conference is August 20th through the 25th. See you there. So let's look at her chart. Let's see what we can tell and see from, well, she's never come out and said they're getting divorced, but it's quite obvious they're having problems. So I want to look at Michelle Obama's chart. We'll glance at Barack Obama's chart as well, but looking at Michelle, here's one thing about Michelle. We don't know the birth time, but when I know where the moon is, I'm comfortable with looking at the chart from Chandra Lagna. That means making the moon the ascendant. Chandra means moon, Lagna means ascendant. So it really gives you a sense of how people feel. And yes, even if you do have the ascendant, this would not contradict what the ascendant says. It just gives you more information. There's another layer to the person. But if you can see how someone feels, it speaks volumes of what they're going through. So putting up Michelle Obama, I have her birthday and year. She was born January 17th, 1964. So I just put 12 noon because it's middle of the day, so I want to see, where's the moon? Is the moon in the same sign the whole day? And yes, it is. So the moon sits at 7 degrees of Aquarius at 12 noon. So the moon changes signs every 2.5 days. And it moves a degree every 2.5 hours. So her moon is somewhere in Aquarius. I don't know exactly the degree, but we're making that the first house, Aquarius. So if we're pulling up Aquarius, then this means that she's got Venus somewhere with her moon, which would give her a lot of grace and charm. And Venus is etiquette, things of that nature. It's in Aquarius, and her Venus is in the nakshatra Shatabishak. That's a tough nakshatra. It can deal with hard to cure diseases, and many times when I see people with that nakshatra strong in their chart, it means that they can be surrounded by people that have hard to cure diseases. Now, I'm not saying it's Barak, it's probably, you know, maybe siblings or parents, but somebody has some major mental issues, because that's what that nakshatra usually rules. But so that's where her Venus sits. But you know what I find so interesting about this chart is that the Saturn, Mars, Sun all sit in the 12th house from the moon. And the reason why I find this so interesting is if you look at the 7th house from the moon, then you're looking at the sign Leo. And what's so interesting is Barack Obama has a lot of planets in Leo. So, and you know what? He was the king. For 8 years, he was president of the United States. That is very Leo. Leos are kings and leaders. That's why I say king, because it rules in ancient time. In all the Vedic texts, it says Leo equates to the king. Okay, so her husband was that, with Leo being the seventh house ruler, 7th from the moon. So if you look where the ruler of the 7th house goes, this is how you read a chart. You look at where the planets that rule each house go, and it gives you volumes of information about what that house is about. So even if there's no planets in a house, whatever planet rules that house, in other words, the planet that rules the sign on that house, wherever it goes will give you the information about that house. So let me show you what I mean by all this. So Aquarius being the ascendant, because the moon's in Aquarius, 7th house across from the moon is Leo. So therefore, what planet rules Leo? So it's whatever planet rules that sign. You have to know what planets rule all the signs, but that's easy to figure out. Okay, so the sun rules Leo. Where does the sun go? Remember, we're all focalizing this through the moon. So the sun goes to the 12th house. And it is conjunct Mars and Saturn, but really tight with Mars. So the ruler of the 7th house, which is her marriage partner, goes to the house of secrets, things we don't know, hidden secrets, things behind the scenes. So basically, something about her husband she doesn't know a lot about. Secrets, behind the scenes, hidden, 12th house energy. But what bothers me is that the sun is with Mars. And Mars does deal with violence. Now, I don't think that he beat her or anything to that effect. I don't mean that. But it can be mean. And her Mars, I will say this, is exalted. What does that mean? Well, Mars' exaltation sign is Capricorn. Her Mars is in Capricorn. It actually means that she is extremely powerful. She herself is very, very powerful. And Mars, whatever Mars is about, she is, which is ambitious, driven, full of energy. That's Mars. But because it sits next to the sun, this describes her husband, because the sun rules the 7th house, and Mars from the moon rules the 3rd and rules the 10th. So the 10th house ruler, being Mars, represents, and it is exalted, major ambitions for leadership, career, business work. And I'd have to say both of them are very, very ambitious. But Mars is, for Aquarius ascendant, ruling, it does rule the third house, which can be kind of an issue and a problem. But the third house does deal with drive and ambition. So this tells me, and this is true, her husband is extraordinarily driven for career success. I mean, you don't run for the president unless you're driven, because that's a big hassle. So this is what I see. But the Mars conjunct the Sun in the 12th house, I want you to know, looking at this chart, there are things we don't know about Barack. And maybe she discovered them, and maybe this is why they're not getting along. And as a matter of fact, going back over to the 7th house, there sits Uranus and Pluto. Uranus means unconventional, unusual. It just means irrational, unpredictable, and it's with Pluto, which, you know what? Thinking about this, he may not be as nice as he appears. He might be, to her at least, because this is her chart, angry and difficult and unpredictable and has a lot of secrets. That's what I'm seeing from this chart. Now Saturn sits in the 12th house with Mars Sun. Saturn rules the 12th and it rules the 1st. So she's secretive. She knows a lot of this stuff. Try to keep it secret, but I don't think she can deal with it anymore. That's what I'm seeing. Now Jupiter is in her in her 2nd house from the moon. That's wealth. It's in Pisces. She's extraordinarily wealthy. How many houses do they have? Successful and wealthy. Jupiter in the 2nd house in Pisces, in its own sign of rulership. It's fantastic. And Jupiter even rules the 11th. It rules the 2nd, it rules Sagittarius, and it rules Pisces. So it rules both the 11th and the 2nd. These are the houses of big money. And this deals with the fact that they've acquired massive wealth. Okay. And Rahu actually sits in the 5th house. And Rahu means, the 5th house is children, means there is a lot of stress with the kids. I'm telling you, the children don't see eye to eye with her. Mercury is with Ketu in this chart, sits in the 11th house. She has a lot of good friends, intellectual friends, but very unusual friends because Ketu's there. But going back to her relationship with Barack Obama. Now I'm going to pull up his chart. And looking at his chart, this is the time and everything we have. I know there's a discrepancy. Was he really born in Hawaii? I'm going to give it that he's born in Hawaii here. So, because you know what? This isn't an easy chart. When I look, and we have his birth time, but we can also look from the moon as well. But looking from the ascendant, he has Jupiter and Saturn, powerhouse planets, together in his 1st house. But I can't help but look over to the 8th house, where he has Uranus, Rahu, Pluto, and Mars. The 8th house is the house that deals with secrets. It deals with corruption. It can deal with metaphysical, spiritual subjects, research, analysis. It's a very difficult house. It deals with the dark night of the soul too. People that have planets in this house have gone through the dark night of the soul. And believe it or not, Barack has. You may think, oh, he was president, how great. No, probably growing up as a kid, he never really felt like he fit in. There was problems with the family because that Uranus, Rahu, Pluto, Mars sit in the 4th house from the moon. His early life was very difficult, especially for and with his mother. I don't even think his mother raised him. His grandmother did. That's true. Wow. So, taking this a step further, which I will, looking at marriage, we have the Mercury Sun in the 7th house, and they are in Cancer, and Cancer's ruled by the moon. Now, his moon is in Taurus, exalted in Rohini. His wife has very expensive taste and can be creative. The moon is wonderful. It's exalted in Taurus, and the best nakshatra for the moon is Rohini. Actually denotes wealth. And yes, he's got wealth, and his wife is very wealthy, and the finer things of life. But here is a lot that I feel like is going on. The thing I can't get past in this chart, now he does have K2 in the 2nd house, which deals with early childhood problems, which, you know, shapes a lot of who we are for the rest of our life. But there are things that we don't know about Barack Obama. Very secretive and dark, with Uranus, Rahu, Pluto, and Mars. Now here's where I'm going with this. Now this just might have been a really, really difficult childhood experience with this, because Mars does rule the 4th house, and it's in the 8th house. That's where the issues and deep darkness comes from. His family. But that Mars-Pluto in the 8th. And here's where I'm going with this. Transiting K2 and transiting Mars are now in Leo in his 8th house. Barack Obama really needs to watch his back and where he's going and what he's doing. He's in danger pretty much with K2 about to come. Well, K2's already been on his Mars. That was probably the issues where he probably didn't appreciate Michelle going out and talking about how she's starting a life on her own and by herself, and all that she's experienced. She actually went on some talk shows talking about how horrible her life was. And a lot of people are saying, I have a hard time feeling bad for her. You know, she's privileged. But there's something eating at her, and it shows in his chart. And that is that K2 crossed over his Mars. This was the end of May, early June. And that's about when she was coming out with all of these, on these talk shows with this. Really bothered him. Probably didn't do anything to help the relationship at the time. And then K2, well, Mars is going to cross over his Mars, which is a big trigger. This will be the end of July. And so going back to her chart, what do we see with these planets? Or in other words, these transits. So I'm looking at, well, I think the Mars K2, well, here we go. It's in the 7th house from the moon. And K2 in the 7th house is the demise of a relationship. And I know we all go through it at some point. We don't all get divorced, but it's an issue. It's a really rough year and a half. K2 just entered into Leo May 29th, and it will be there for a year and a half. May 29th, 2025. It will be there till November of 2026. This hurts. And once K2 and Rahu go over her moon, that will be really treacherous. So for the next year and a half, This is really difficult for Michelle. She's been through Sati Sati. Saturn's been in her moon, on her moon. I don't know what degree her moon is, but it's in Aquarius. Saturn was in Aquarius for 2.5 years. And now she's in the third phase of Sati Sati, where Saturn's in the sign after the moon. Not easy, but it was worse the last 2 years. I didn't hear her say much, but she was having a very rough time with the marriage in the past 2.5 years. So looking at where everything's headed with K2 and then Mars being in the 7th house, she's angry, and she's angry at Barack. Their marriage is not working out right now. And I just think for the next year, year and a half, if they can make it through this, I think what they'll do is just live their separate lives. They're not going to get divorced. There's too much to divide up. But if they are going to get divorced, it will happen within the next year, year and a half, with K2 in the 7th house and Rahu on her moon. And that will be in approximately a year. So I think that's enough. I think we've delved enough into their privacy and into their life. And remember, a lot of people go, well, it's not okay to be looking at people's charts. When you're a public figure, sorry, your chart and your life is public. And you just have to go along with that. If you want to be famous, you're not going to have a lot of privacy. And that's just the way it is. So one thing I love to do with this, with looking at people's charts, especially the famous, is learn more about astrology. These famous people's charts are the best tool we have to learn astrology, because we can see it all happening. So with that, I think I'll close. Remember, if you would like to learn astrology, learn how to read these charts, be an astrologer, take my course. Go to universityofvedicastrology.com, and remember, the new start date for semester 1 is August 6th. So I hope to see you there. Thank you.